Hi, this is Sarit Switzer, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast, a podcast devoted to the teachings of Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi as recorded in his most famous work, the Tanya. My hope for this show is to make these teachings accessible and relatable to the average person, regardless of prior Jewish education or affiliation. The episodes follow the prescribed daily study portions and are meant to serve as practical lessons in how to live your life as your true self and develop an authentic and powerful relationship with your Creator. I have personally experienced the effects the study of this work has had on me, and I'm excited to share what I can of this knowledge with you. So please join me on this journey of learning, self-growth, and connection with your source. Hi, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast. This is episode 374 for the 7th of Kislev in a leap year. Many years ago, when I was still living in Montreal and I was still in college, actually, back in the day, I hosted a meal for the holiday of Purim. So traditionally on Purim is one of my favorite holidays, if not my favorite holiday. One of the many things that we do on Purim is we have a big meal, a big festive meal. And I get a lot of joy out of hosting these meals. And so I hosted a meal like this, and I invited all kinds of different people, all of my friends, from many of which I knew from university. And amongst them was this girl who was not religious at all, like totally not religious, and really actually quite ignorant of Judaism, but a very spiritual and a very curious, truth-seeking person nonetheless. And after everybody left, she stayed behind, and she wanted to talk to me, and she had a lot on her mind, and she was asking me a lot of questions about Judaism, about Purim, about spirituality, all kinds of things like that. And in our discussion, I mean, it was a long time ago, so I honestly don't remember everything we spoke about, but I remember bringing up the Lubavitcher Rebbe, because the Lubavitcher Rebbe is, I consider myself to be Chabad, and I consider him to be, my leader, the rabbi that I look to for guidance over and above everybody else. And so I spoke to her about the rabbi. I was mentioning the rabbi to her. I don't remember in what context. And she had never heard of him before. She didn't know who he was. So I said to her, oh, here, I'll show you a picture of him. So I happened to have a picture of him. I don't know if I carried it around in my wallet at the time or it was somewhere in my room. I showed her a picture of the rabbi, and she had the most bizarre reaction. She looks at this picture and her face gets kind of contorted, sort of confused. And she blurts out, wow, he looks so heavy. And I thought that was the strangest reaction. Like usually, what are we used to when we show people pictures of the Rebbe? People usually say, wow, he looks like a really nice man, or he looks really like his eyes are so bright and glowing, or something along those lines. But to hear, wow, he looks so heavy, I was like, what are you talking about? I've never heard that description of the Rebbe before. And she said, here, let me show you what I mean. Let me show you a picture of my guru. So she takes out this picture from her wallet this time of this Indian-looking man, also with a long beard, and gazing into the camera. And immediately I saw what she was talking about. This guru, quote unquote, of hers that she was talking about, some Indian guy, his face looked totally blissed out. He looked very like he was smiling, and the only word I can use for it is like blissed out, like very just eyes kind of glazed over and just like, on some kind of high. And then I looked at the Rebbe and I looked at this other Indian man, and I saw exactly what she was talking about, and I saw the difference. When you looked at the Rebbe was not blissed out. The Rebbe was very much here and present in the here and now. And as much as, yes, the Rebbe had an intense sense of joy and life and vitality within him, there was a certain intensity in the Rebbe. There was a certain fervor and groundedness with all of that. So yes, the Rebbe was in fact very heavy. And I use this as kind of like an impetus to kind of pivot the conversation into explaining, to talking about this more and explaining to her what I think she was seeing and what really the difference is between Judaism and a lot of these Eastern religions are. So, not that I'm an expert in these Eastern religions by any means, but from my, just being in the yoga world for quite a bit and having some experience with transcendental meditation and just, doing some readings when I was younger on these subjects, a lot of the focus in these more Eastern religions is on transcendence. That's hence the name transcendental meditation. It's about transcending the world. It's about kind of like lifting yourself up over and above the world around you, to try to achieve higher and higher spiritual heights. In the more spiritual schools of yoga, which I personally purposefully refrain from getting too close to, but a lot of the focus is on detaching from the world to the point that you ultimately should shut off your senses. Really, is that's a lot of that's one of the purposes of what people try to attain. So what we're going to be learning about in today's Tanya is that this is the exact antithesis of what the focus is supposed to be in Judaism. While yes, there's a value to not getting bogged down into this physical world to the point that we take the physical world too seriously, or that we, worship physical things, whether they be money or pride or people or society or whatever it is, our purpose of coming down here into this physical realm is not to just like fly back right back up again, but it's in fact to bring godliness down here into this physical reality, to make a dwelling place here for God. And this is exactly the focus of today's Tanya. And in context of this broader discussion we've been having, where we're still in the middle of this essay 4 in Kuntres Acharon, is this idea of the importance and the necessity of the physical mitzvos, and why physical mitzvahs are absolutely necessary, and it's not enough to just develop love and fear of God, even if it's a very lofty and high and intellectually based love and fear of God. If you don't bring it down and you don't have this love and fear manifest in physical mitzvahs. In Kabbalistic terminology, which we're going to get into a little bit today, the way to explain this is that it's not about elevating the light out of the physical world and having it elevate back to its source, but it's rather about drawing the light down into the vessels down here, or at times elevating the vessels themselves upwards. And that when we elevate light, this is actually just a temporary experience. This is a temporary thing that happens. Whereas when we draw light down into vessels, or when we elevate the vessels themselves, this creates a permanent effect. So for context, once again, as I mentioned, we're still in the middle of essay 4 in Kuntres Acharon. And the subject of this essay has been to emphasize the importance and the necessity of the physical mitzvahs and looking at it from many different angles. Yesterday, we spoke about it in terms of the fact that physicality actually comes from a higher place than our souls, that the physicality comes from the world of chaos, of tohu, and our souls come from the world of tikkun. So thus, by engaging with the physical world to do mitzvahs, we tap into something higher than ourselves, and we actually can elevate the holiness that's found and trapped within the chaos. We also spoke about the idea that really vessels contain essence in a way that light cannot, and a bunch of other things. So go back and review the past few episodes if you'd like to get more of an in-depth understanding of this. So today, the Alter Rebbe begins by bringing up the idea of souls. And we began speaking about souls yesterday. And we spoke about how the source of souls, especially a soul that comes from the world of Atzilus, which is a very, very lofty soul, that a soul that comes from the world of Atzilus the origin of this soul is from the vessels in the world of Atzilus. And their nefesh and their ruach of such a person comes from the vessels of the worlds of Yetzirah and Asiya. So that the point is that these souls, their origin is from vessels. So since the origin of souls comes from vessels, then the intellectually generated love and fear that such people generate, since the origin of their soul is in vessels, then it has an effect in the vessels of Yetzirah and Asiya, in a way of an arousal from below to above, which is what we call a sarusa dilatata, an arousal from below. However, so a person might think like, okay, great, I'm affecting the vessel. So that's great. Isn't that the whole point? Because as we've learned, the vessels really are more about essence than the light is. Nevertheless, this action of this arousal from below to above that happens when a person generates this intellectually based love and fear of God, is what it does is it causes a state of departure, God forbid, So it's like we're causing this departure of the vessels to fly upwards, which, as we'll see, is absolutely not the purpose. This is not what God wants. The only way that we can actually cause a downward flow as opposed to just an upward flow is through performing mitzvahs. Because when we perform mitzvahs, what we're doing is we're drawing down light into the vessels, and we're specifically drawing light into the external aspect of the vessels. So the way this works on a technical level is that the external aspects of the vessels above get drawn down below, and the inner aspect of the vessels down here get lifted up above. So there is an upward motion, but there's also a downward motion. There needs to be that ascension, but also the descension. And this is alluded to in the Zohar in Parshas Pekudei, where it talks about this order of elevation and this order of descent at the same time. And both are needed. We need both the ascension and we need the descension, both. And the way the elevation happens is through what we call the Mein Nukvin, the feminine waters, that from this level of Sag that we talked about yesterday, which is when we are involved in service and divine speech. So this is the ascension part. So yes, ascension is definitely necessary, but the whole purpose of creation is to reveal the light down here, not just to have it lift up above. Because the action of elevation, this just produces a temporary effect, whereas we want to create a permanent effect. And so the whole idea is to draw down the light down here, right? And not only this, but when we talk about this elevation, this ascension, we actually aren't even talking about elevating the light, really. We're talking about the elevation of the vessels. And what we're doing is we're elevating the vessels to the higher light, which is what happens, interestingly, on Shabbos and Yom Kippur. So it's not about having the light get elevated and to have the light just leave the world, God forbid. And to read more about this, the Alter Rebbe cites the Pri Etz Chaim. Okay, so this whole discussion of light and vessels and all of that. So to make this even more practical to us and more applicable to us, the Alter Rebbe explains that our souls, specifically focusing on the nefesh, ruach, and neshama aspects of our souls, which are found within our bodies, in relation to our bodies, we can think of our souls as being the light, and we can think of our bodies as being the vessel. Another light and vessel weighted example is if we think about intellectually generated love and fear in comparison to mitzvahs. So in this case, the intellectually generated love and fear would be the light, and the mitzvahs, the practical mitzvahs, are the kelim, the vessels. So all of this is really to emphasize to us again that the importance, since we've learned that the vessels are really where it's at, and it's all about drawing the light down into the vessels and elevating the vessels themselves. This shows us that doing mitzvahs specifically, and doing mitzvahs specifically with our physical bodies, that's really the purpose, over and above just using our souls to create this intellectually love and fear of God. And through all of this, we can really understand something which the Alter Rebbe has already brought up, but here he's emphasizing it once again, why Moshe Rabbeinu prayed so fervently to enter into the land of Israel. And he actually prayed 515 prayers, which is the numerical equivalent in Gematria of the word Vaitchanan, which is the name of the Parsha of that week. And Vaitchanan means to plead, to beg. So why was Moshe so fervently begging and pleading to enter into the land of Israel? Is because he wanted to do the mitzvahs that can only be done in the land of Israel, because he recognized the power of these mitzvahs and how this really is the whole purpose of creation. And then the Alter Rebbe concludes by saying that another way to create this effect, to really of this focus on the vessels, is speaking about the laws concerning the mitzvahs. So if a person's studying, we've mentioned this before as well, if a person studies the laws of the mitzvahs and the details of the mitzvahs, or, the how and why and the deeper explanation, anything to do with the mitzvahs in terms of their practical application, this creates a similar effect to doing the mitzvahs themselves. Obviously, if you have the intent to actually do the mitzvahs as well. So so that's the end of the section today. So once again, the main takeaway from today is really that Judaism, that our lives, our purposes here are not about just flying away. It's not about transcending the world. It's not about just being light and blissed out and all of that. Yes, we're supposed to be happy, sure. That's a big topic in Judaism that the Alter Rebbe does get into in other places in Tanya, but we need to be grounded and we need to bring the light down here into this world. It's all about the vessels. It's all about bringing the light down. And we do that through our physical mitzvahs. So that's it for today. And we will continue along these lines tomorrow. We still have quite a bit to go in this essay, so stick with it, and I'll speak to you then. Thanks for listening to the It Is Taught podcast, hosted by Sarit Switzer. This podcast is dedicated in loving memory of my maternal grandfather, Avraham Yitzchak ben Binyamin HaKohen of blessed memory. Music by Shoshana. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the show, please share it with others and subscribe on YouTube, Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to leave us a 5-star review. To find out more about the It Is Taught project, including more information on my soon-to-be published book, please visit our website, itistaught.com. To catch the latest from me, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Looking forward to speaking with you tomorrow, and until then, have a great day.